So welcome everyone. This is going to be the next gen digital validation enabling CSA with AI webinar presented by CG, but we also have Garth and Cisco from Flex and Getinge respectfully here to chime in. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce them. Cisco Vicente is former FDA Case for Quality program manager. I like to call him the godfather of CSA. He's now at Getinge leading continuous improvement activities, but he is well versed in a lot of the topics that we're going to go through today. We also got Mr. Garth Conrad here. He's the VP of Quality at Flex. He's been leading the charge over the last few years for this Gen AI revolution, and he's passionate about making quality processes better, for sure. And then we also have Sharada Ramamurthy. She's my better half here at CG. She is an expert in almost everything, but specifically with CSA, digital validation tools, and AI, she's going to add a lot of good inputs to the conversation today. And we're really excited to get started and talk to you guys about digital validation, CSA, and AI. So start off, right, where is the industry going with validation? I'd say that things are revving up quite quickly here. I'm going to be a dad in a few weeks, so it's okay to use that dad joke there. In the past, we all know this, validation has been historically a document-driven, manual, paper-based process. Compliance really at all costs has been the approach over the years. And over time, it's evolved into being mostly non-value added and inefficient. But hey, just like the Model T, it got us from point A to point B. And you know, that worked for a little while. But as time has gone on, we've increased our digitization, our critical thinking, and we've got into more smarter and leaner validation practices. So that's where we're in the middle there. We have risk-based CSV. But we're still overcomplicating things, right? Our risk assessments are still very subjective. We're doing things in silos, and we're doing a lot of redundant work. So where we are now is what I like to say, and hopefully we're here now, is the integrated CSA approach, which is more of a digitalization and now AI-powered process. This is where we should be. This is where we'll grow to be. And the goal is that no matter what, you're going to validate and the least burdensome approach and in a value-added manner. If we're still driving paper-based processes, I'm going to be honest, you're riding a horse and buggy here, right? While the industry is really switching to Teslas and even better and faster cars. So we really need to kind of step up our game and be a part of this integrated CSA approach. But I know it's a lot to take in, and like Rome, this pie in the sky is not built in a day. You can't just flip a switch. So progress over perfection is really the mantra here. And at CG, we're here to help. So we have kind of an 8-step roadmap to that we typically work with clients on CSA and digital validation. So Sharada, if you want to kind of walk everybody through our approach to kind of getting to this integrated CSA area.
Sure, Dave. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So as you see the roadmap here, it starts from assessment and ends with automation, right? So shifting to a CSA and digital validation, it is just not about doing more, right? It is about doing it in a very smarter way. So with the right roadmap, like you see here, you can simplify your validation process and also make sure that you boost your automations and also at the same time, stay audit and inspection ready. So as part of this, what are the key things that we are covering, right? It starts with a typical assessment where we evaluate the current validation procedures, assess the risk, gaps, etc. Then we align with the principles of CSA for risk-based thinking and also align with the regulatory expectations. And as part of applications, we apply CSA to the real use cases with greater focus on critical thinking and the intended use and what we are trying to validate as a system. So then comes the digitization process, which introduces us to the digital tools and platforms, which we are going to see elaborately throughout this webinar. And to manage validation activities seamlessly, we need it. Then we also do a pilot run, which is like a focus run, a pilot to prove the value with a minimal risk and have very quick wins to see how we are pressure testing it and putting it to test, whether it is successful or not. And the key factor is enablement, where we train the teams, upskill the teams, update the current process and procedures, and also embed the CSA practices into our workflows, right? And then we look into the deployment, where we scale the approach across multiple projects and systems, or division by division or department by department. And then we have a seamless automation in terms of test case generation, execution, traceability, and also to make sure that we take it not just stop with the deployment, still go ahead with support and maintenance, right? So what it means is these components come together to create a smarter, streamlined validation process that also goes hand in hand with speed, compliance, scalability, and agility. So that is where we are looking at this digital transformation lever that accelerates time to value, it reduces risk, and it ensures that we have a long-term sustained compliance. So that is how we have put this roadmap, and we are visualizing it.
Great, thank you, Sharada. And yeah, I want to take a pause here to ask Garth or Cisco. So, first off, is this kind of 8-phase approach, is this similar to the journeys that your organizations have been through? And is there any specific step here that you think is important to highlight and really was the difference maker for you guys?
Cisco, you want to go first?
Cisco, are you with us there?
While Cisco's working on that, I'll jump in just to keep things going. So sort of the journey that we took, I'll say in essence followed the 8 steps that were here. Unfortunately, I will tell you, no one gets it right the first time as they're going through a transition. So we got into pilot, and then we actually backed up and had to relook at our process again, remodify some of our procedures and activities along it before we got back into pilot again. And I would encourage organizations, you may not get it the first time as you're transitioning through, but the idea again is to keep your eye on the goal and continue to press forward. We did move forward with the full transition of CSV to CSA, as well as going completely digital. So we removed paper from our process in terms of the things that we're doing. And then today we're beginning to use AI tools as part of the creation of content or elements of our CSA validations and software controls that we're doing along those lines. So we've moved along this journey. I can tell you the timing associated with front to back on this really varies based on organization and the organization change that you need to go through, but the value that you get out of a transition, both from a CSA perspective and from a digital perspective, are huge. For us, it was efficiencies in the neighborhood of 50% improvement in what we were doing under paper-based activities. So really important conversion we went through as an organization.
Awesome, thank you, Garth. Cisco, are you audible now?
Let's find out. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Loud and clear.
That's interesting. Yeah, I was commenting in general that it's I like the flow. It's probably the right way. I think I've found so far that there's bits and pieces that everybody kind of starts in and tackles. It's missing some of the aspects of things, but I think I'd have to agree with something Garth said there, right? The idea of being able to pressure test things, run it through, because you're going to need to really find what the right fit, especially for where your organization is. Culture, it's not going to align exactly right the first time. It's probably key to a lot of the entire process as a whole. And I think people need to be ready to just get ready to jump into it and try some of that stuff and move forward.
Awesome. Thank you, gents. All right. So moving on here. Now we talked about kind of the roadmap. Let's take a step back and what is digital validation, right? I know that there's some guidance coming out and things like that. So Sharada, you want to talk quickly about what digital validation tools are?
Sure, Dave. Yes. So, as our life sciences domain continue to accelerate, digital validation is a buzzword that you can hear across the board. So, digital validation pretty much offers faster, smarter path to compliance that combines automation, AI, ML, and also CSA to streamline the entire validation process. And it is applied across pharmaceutical, biotechnology, and medtech. And at the same time, we need to ensure that we are focusing on the patient safety, product quality, and data integrity. And if we just have a quick rundown of what we have here, what we need a digital validation tool and a platform, a central hub to manage all our validation activities, documents, approvals, all in one place. Then we need test automation. Yes, it speeds up our testing process, running scripts automatically, enabling fewer manual clicks with faster results and reporting. Then we have a complete end-to-end traceability where we can keep everything connected right from our requirements to design to test, and so nothing falls through the cracks. Then we have audit support, which has like be audit ready anytime with digital logs and reports that are easy to pull from the system when an auditor is asking for it. Then we also have the entire piece of the artificial intelligence and machine learning support, right? That adds to the intelligent validation today. Like it think of like a predictive risk, doing smarter reviews using AI ML, and also having continuous improvements, performing periodic reviews, and all of this. And end of it, it all aligns to our software development lifecycle. So what we are trying to say here is validation is not a bottleneck. It moves in sync with our agile and DevOps workflows. We can have a SDLC alignment with the use of digital tools. And as Dave mentioned, we also have a good practice guide on digital validation that got published in April 2025. So the ISP digital validation guide shows how tools like digital validation can boost data integrity, it can streamline the operations, and also keep compliance across life sciences. And the validation guide also has a real world examples, some practical tips, and also some methods to make digital validation work in the real world. And what's exciting is we have our SME from compliance group sitting on ISP GAMP America Steering Committee member, was one of the core member of the team shaping this guide alongside the global industry experts. So it also explores system selection, data management strategies, compliance frameworks, etc. You can go ahead and have a look. So that is what we wanted to cover as part of this particular slide.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, anything else to add on digital validation before I move on? All right. So Garth, maybe you want to talk about some of the things that you're seeing trends in the industry with us, basically using Gen AI to enhance and speed up kind of our day-to-day QA operations.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think everyone is experiencing this transition with AI and still trying to figure out today, where do you incorporate, how do you incorporate, what validations are required associated with what you're doing. And the intent of the content here is to give you some ideas about where industry is using it today. I've had the opportunity to talk with a lot of different companies. I've spoken at a number of different conferences as well. And then internally within Flex, we've been using Gen AI across a lot of our quality system activities. As it relates to software validation, I will say we went through our transition of CSV to CSA, that digitization process first, and now we're coming back and beginning to overlay the AI tools on top of it. And AI tools, the nice part about Gen AI is you have some ability to control how you apply it, where you apply it, and what it's used for. I think the most critical thing is, as you're using AI tools, you think about the roles that you're enabling with AI, how you want AI to function. You think about the actions that you want it to do, whether it's generate context, whether it's analyze, whether it's summarize, or evaluate, or whatever it's doing along those lines. And then obviously, when you look at your quality management system, there are a number of different processes, elements, or records, or items that you can apply the AI technique to, or the process to. Validation records being one of them. we've been successful across a number of these cases in terms of what we're doing, but it does require that you do planning up front, understand how the tool set is working, and make sure that you're establishing the controls around it as you're applying it to your particular use case.
I love it, Garth. Yeah, and anything to add, Cisco, to this? Now he's having some microphone difficulties.
Audio issues again.
Again?
No, you're back. You're back.
Okay. I figured it's gonna get to the point where, you know, I'm probably gonna say something on camera here that probably shouldn't be said in response to the audio issues. So no, so I actually, and I think I really appreciate not only the distinction that Garth has made with the roles, but also the idea of the AI actions, right? Because I think in terms of where people are always kind of struggling or asking questions, and I think even stuff that's come up internally as we've been looking on our journey and applying it, it's really around getting that definition right? Where are we doing with it? How are we utilizing it? I'm going to probably harp on this throughout the entire discussion, back to the intended use, right? It always comes back down to that piece. So I think this is a great layout. And if you really can think through some of this stuff, honestly, there's a lot of power and opportunity within what's available in some of the AI tools now.
Yep, absolutely. So transitioning a little bit to a focus from CG's side of, okay, you know, we talked about QMS as a whole, but what CG is trying to do is supercharge the SDLC practices, right? And what we're doing in our digital validation tools. So over here, the next couple of slides, we're going to walk through the different phases. And overall, you can see we're not going to go through everything here, but overall, you can see that we have 3 main tools that we're utilizing, powered by our CG labs. We have Smarter Validation, we have Migrate, which is a AI-powered data migration tool, and then we also have the Claire AI platform that has co-pilots and domain-specific add-ons to help kind of on a lot of these, Gen AI creation and flagging and things like that are going on throughout planning, requirements, and then into test case development, testing, defect resolution, audit readiness, things like that. So, Sherida, I don't know if there's a couple that you want to highlight here.
Yeah, sure, Dave. So as Dave mentioned, right, throughout each phase, our CG AI supports the validation document generation, requirement generation, rewriting a requirement in a better way, test case generation, and also having the execution, traceability, documentation that goes throughout the life cycle hand in hand. So this approach really helped us to transform from the traditional validation into a value-adding risk-based process that aligned with both CSA as well as meeting the digital compliance expectations.
Yeah, great. So this is something that you guys can look at later, and we'll have in other materials too. But essentially, it's walking through how AI can, again, supercharge what we have in place with your digital validation and your CSA practices. And again, the sky's really the limit for the use case here. But this is what we're seeing as a trend of some of our partners and what they're doing and how we're helping. So cool. So this is all fun stuff, right? That we're talking about here, but there is a little bit of trepidation from the industry. Some conservative folks, a little scared about AI. I might be one of them. I'm a little bit of a doomsdayist, but in terms of utilizing it in our quality management practices, Sherida, you want to kind of highlight the survey that we saw and the takeaways here?
Sure. Yes, Dave. So these are some of the challenges in implementing the AI systems, right? So we were just doing some research. We understood that a lot of enterprise leaders are diving into Gen AI, but turning ideas into actions, as you all know, is it always not easy, right? So with this, one of the HFS research that laid out top challenges like black box concerns, data issues, lack of clear strategy, and holding teams back from implementing AI seamlessly, right? So as part of this summary, what we saw, the key inputs were like, without a clear Gen AI strategy, governance framework, and continuous oversight, companies risk staying stuck in pilots. Like Garth was mentioning, we do have pilot failures that we have seen before, and facing regulatory non-compliance and also missing ROI. These were the 3 key highlights that we saw as part of this challenges. And on top of that, adding to it, we also have major regulatory constraints because we have evolving global regulations. We have the EU-AI Act, or the HIPAA, the FDA, GDPR, create uncertainty around compliance and validation, or the fear in implementing to make sure that what if we go wrong, what would happen to us? That fear is stopping most of the organizations, or we are seeing it as a major roadblocker for them for a scalable AI adoption. So AI basically is not just a tech problem, it's an organizational challenge. So to succeed with AI, organizations and companies must prioritize the explainability, the compliance management, the change management, and sustainability instead of just focusing on the model performance. So that is the key takeaway that I see from this tape.
Yeah, so Cisco and Garth, if I'm playing devil's advocate and I'm a leader in your organization and you guys wanted to have maybe complaints, Gen AI help, or QMS documentation or CAPAs or things like that, what are you hearing? Are these the things that you're hearing that you're getting pushback from, or where's the barriers to implementing some of this stuff?
I'll go. I'm actually hearing lots of different sides to the story. There are some companies that are very AI focused and AI driven, and their leadership is driving the organization to begin using the tools to help with efficiencies, help enable business processes, and really drive what they're doing. And with those companies, I think it's more of how fast can we adopt technology and bring technology in, and that's really the driver piece of it. I speak with a lot of friends in the industry and have worked with a lot of other companies as well, where there's a bit more apprehension about use of AI, and I'll call it, a lot of it is about the unknown. It's unknown how regulators are going to react when they come and conduct inspections in your facility. And because of that, there's a concern about using it. It's unknown about as the technology evolves, will you have to redo the things that you've done internally, reestablish systems? So people are concerned about how early do you jump in with technologies when it's continuing to evolve now. And I think that's been the biggest challenge. We've started to get regulation globally now on what the requirements are for AI. There's some guidances that are beginning to come out as well, and I think some people are reluctant to make change until that is really established globally, what all the requirements are that you have to comply with, for fear of having to redo what they've done.
Makes sense. Cisco?
Yeah, let's see if this is coming out through. I'm beginning to wonder if this thing is operating on AI and specifically, targeting me here. So I like this chart. It's a lot of the elements here that I've heard, not just here, but it mentioned other places, right? But I think the notion, at least internally, it's been a lot of the idea or focus on getting a overall strategy first in place. That seems to be a big concern point, which not just here but in other places. After all that work is done, it always ends up very generic and focused on just not sharing outside data with the piece. So it's one of these that a little bit of a false flag, I think, in a lot of things. And actually, looking at the question set, to me, the bigger concerns are that poor data quality and lack of skills. Right? This is you get out of the AI tools what you put in, and I think that's where a lot more focus needs to be, more than on are we putting the right governance into things, or and I get the focus on legal regulatory constraints, but even in that sense, I feel that sometimes we're holding ourselves back with a fear or a perception on where that's going to go versus helping to guide that direction. But yeah, I've heard just about all of these. The one that's interesting to me is the uncertain ROI, because the few elements or pieces that we've done and tried, the ROI has been very evident very quickly.
Yeah, actually, one thing I'll bring up regarding that too, the uncertain ROI. People may not have seen this, but the St. Louis Federal Reserve actually did a study on the use of AI from a productivity perspective, and this is a broad study that they did. And what they looked at was, on average, companies, departments, or individuals that are using AI as a standard part of their job are gaining about 15% productivity across the board in what they're doing. Now, again, that's going to be use case specific and things along those lines, but I think it's an interesting study that this is a, the Federal Reserve, obviously charged with understanding how productivity works across the entire nation and all industries. And for them to be able to come forward with data that supports the fact that there's that type of improvement in productivity, that's huge. So now when you consider a return on investment for what you're doing within the company, using that as your baseline can help understand, do you make the investments that you need to? Are you truly going to gain the benefit with your workforce in terms of the things that you're doing with AI?
And interesting enough, Garth, those numbers jive with some of the projects we've done internally too.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So, but I do think that there's a reason why people push back and say, oh, Cisco being former FDA, right? Are we going to get in trouble if we do this, or do we need to validate this AI, component within our GXP systems? How do we make sure that we have the right controls so that we don't get dinged? And there's so many regulations and standards out there, right? And you mentioned a few of them, Garth, that are coming online. And yeah, I think, Sharada, what you see here, right, is that risk-based approach is a focus of all of them. There's a lot about human in the loop, right, and making sure that if it's generating something, it's not just a rubber stamp, right? Or if you're blessing this thing as, okay, this is the oracle, I can go to it and ask questions, make sure that the outputs of that are validated, right? And that system's truly an expert, right? So I don't know, Sharada, anything you want to add to these couple slides? All the different standards?
Sure. So as AI adoption takes off, as we know, across our industry, right? We have the EU AI Act, we have FDA's Good Machine Learning Practices, then we have the Colorado AI Act that is going to take effect in 1st February 2026. And we also have the standards where we have like ISO 42001. So what these says is, irrespective of the type of regulation or the standard, risk assessment is the heart of it, especially with EU AI Act. It classifies a system by risk level, all the AI systems that is unacceptable, high, limited, minimal, and mandates a strict control for high risk use cases. Similarly, when we look at FDA's Good Machine Learning Practices, it provides guiding principles for safe, effective, responsible use of AI and ML in medical devices. And we have our standard from ISO, which is 42001:2023, which focuses on governance, risk management, transparency, and lifecycle oversight of AI systems. So what we are trying to say here as a key is the few key things here is the explainability, human oversight, as Dave mentioned, the human in the loop mechanisms to ensure responsible AI, and the applicability of AI, where these regulations apply to what type of AI technology. That is, we need to understand that. And from an explainability standpoint, AI should be able to explain its decisions in a way people can actually understand and interpret. And the systems must be transparent, it should be auditable, and it should be able to explain its decisions in a human understandable terms. So while we have all of this, the heart of all this one non-negotiable principle is our classic risk-based approach, which is mandatory. Whether you're classifying a system, whether we are validating a model, or keeping things monitored over a period of time, we need to make sure that we do it based on risk. Why? Because not all AI systems carry the same level of impact. Example, a chatbot we just use for an FAQ is not the same when we are doing an AI diagnosis for diseases or anything related to a drug release decisions, right? So an AI, so what we expect, or what the regulators expect us to do, is apply more controls where the stakes are higher, focus on validation efforts based on the real impact. And again, not one size fit for all, right? It's not about treating every AI system the same. It's about what we need, what is the intended use, be smart, focused, and compliant. We don't have to validate the entire AI system end to end with the same intensity. Instead, apply the rigor where it matters the most without any heavy lift. So that's what I just wanted to add, Dave.
Yeah, I love it. And I know we got only 15 minutes here, so I'm going to kind of go through the next slide, which just highlights, some of the repercussions of not thinking about validating the AI. So Sharada, you want to quickly just walk through these, and then we'll jump into the questions for the panel?
Sure, Dave. So we saw the challenges, then we saw what are all some of the acts. So when we become non-compliant, what happens, right? When we fail to align with the regulatory expectation, whether it's skipping a validation, overstating an AI capability, or lacking some design controls or a backup evidence for that, all the global agencies will take notice. What is the result? We get a warning letter. So I just want to highlight one of the example of a recent warning letter on the left side that you see that was issued in Feb 2025. What happened? So the company marketed an AI-based app with claims to diagnose and treat neurological conditions. And what is the impact of AI here? AI systems that influence clinical decisions definitely fall under the regulation. So if you overstate the AI capabilities, example, be it a diagnosis or a treatment, the product automatically becomes a regulated medical device, which requires robust validation and approval. So what happened here? There were multiple cases of non-conformance. One of that was lack of design controls. There was no evidence of the design input, output verification, or validation process. So as we know, AI models must be validated for its intended use, whether the appropriate data sets was used, whether the risk assessment was conducted effectively, and without design control or no traceability on all of this, AI behaves reliably, and we will not be able to prove that it behaves reliably under the expected condition, right? So that is where the impact was. The unvalidated AI output was concluded as unsafe or ineffective for making medical decisions. So you can go through it in the FDA warning letter site. So especially with AI and digital tools, right, what regulators expect is risk-based validation, traceability, human-in-the-loop intervention, continuous monitoring. And if we don't build it right and prove it works, the regulators will. So that is the takeaway here.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, there's a lot of legalese, right, with all these guidances, all these regulations, and as you're seeing, there's some activity from non-compliance. So here at CG, we can help kind of make sense of what are the implications on validation once you're looking at AI, and we'll get into some of these questions now for our expert panelists here. So first one, this is for Cisco, Garth, Sharada, you can chime in too. Are there any case studies that you can share on the benefits of implementing CSI, DVTs, and especially AI components? And Cisco, you're
still early in the process.
No,
here.
you're good. You're good. You're good. Maybe you're just not talking loud enough.
I swear it is. It feels like I'm also in the room here, and if I don't move enough, the lights turn off. Maybe the computer's doing the same thing. We are, and I think to the point that was made earlier in some of that chart, right? Our leadership is very active, high level. They're pushing the notion of AI. The pushback is more in the mid levels, right, where you get the notions of not trusting or what can you do with it? But there is some pockets where we are looking and trying it also as an aid, right, an assistant, coding, checking software development pieces. And to the point that I think Garth alluded to earlier, we've seen 12% improvements in some of the output and the productivity through some of that space. So there is an active interest now in exploring more use cases and more activity within the organization. Now with CSA and DVT, we are pushing, but it's our process on our end.
Yeah. Yeah, and on our end, as I mentioned before, our conversion to digital CSA, we went through a very extensive study internally to understand what the productivity improvement was. And we tied that back down to, I think the number was actually 42% improvement, at least when we did the initial assessment values associated with that. Now that we've gone back in and begun using AI tools in helping with things like the creation of test cases and the review or summarization of test results and creating reports associated with it, I think the latest that I heard was we have about another 28% improvement on top of our initial drivers that we looked at. When I look at AI in general, our use cases, so more of the generative piece of things and the way that we're using it across the our quality system elements, we actually have two measurements that we're looking at with that. The first is around productivity, and we've seen a general productivity improvement of around that 15% number, so matches the things that other companies have seen. But the other piece where we really started is as a contract manufacturer and the way that we service our customers, a lot of our content that we create actually goes to our customers for review. And unfortunately, as with anybody, when you're presenting content to customers, sometimes there's a back and forth that there's a disagreement on content or wording or whatever it may be. So we've also been using Gen AI to help with that customer satisfaction portion of things and to eliminate any of the differences in understanding or expectations around documentation. And in cases where we're using the Gen AI to help or assist in that content, we've seen anywhere from, it depends on the particular items you're looking at, but anywhere from about a 30 to about a 75% improvement in the customer satisfaction aspect of the content.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, and maybe this is a good segue to ask you, Garth. So when do I validate AI components in my systems, right? When is it necessary? When isn't it necessary? What's the rule of thumb here?
Yeah, so this is continuing to evolve. And what I would tell you is that there's not a single answer. What I would encourage people to do is, as you're looking at the use of AI, you really need to consider a few different levels, I call it a risk assessment in this structure. The first thing, obviously, we're beginning to get a lot more regulation out there today. Some regulation is very specific about systems that need to be validated or controlled in that manner, and you have to take that as your first cut of evaluation. The second piece is really looking at the configuration of the AI that you're using. For example, are you using a large language model, which is publicly available, versus are you creating internal training data, creating your own algorithm, for something like an AI-enabled vision inspection or predictive maintenance on equipment, where you're utilizing your own data set to help create the algorithm, which then runs the AI function or activity that you're doing. So that's the second piece, is the configuration, or how is AI set up. And then the third element of things is, how are you using it? And this is a really important question for people to ask themselves. If you look at this today as example, within your organization, you may assign a kappa to multiple people in your organization. It may be someone that only has a couple of years of experience, or it may be someone that has 20 years of experience. The outcome of the kappa that they generate goes through a review process that you have internally. You have experts that review it for content, making sure that investigation records are documented and everything is completed along those lines. When you look at use of AI as example within the kappa process, how are you using it? If you're trying to replace your reviewers and the content or the items your reviewers are doing, it's a much higher risk situation, because that is your capture mechanism for any problem that you have. So the likelihood to need for validation and documentation associated with how AI functions when it's performing that role is much greater than, let's say, it's an in-process tool that's assisting the engineer or assisting the person that's generating the kappa and the content that's in there. So it's really important to look at that demarcation line of, are you making decisions with AI, or is AI there as an efficiency improvement tool that's helping you in process? And very clear difference in terms of what validation activities are required based on that use case or those use cases.
Absolutely, Garth. So in AI terms, we call it as the context of use, right? So once the context of use is clearly defined, it becomes much more easier to determine whether AI validation is required or not. Understanding how the AI system is used, what it does, who it relies on, and what decision it influences, these are all the key factors to assess the GXP relevance and its risk level, right? So yeah, absolutely, very valid points, Garth.
Yeah.
And I think an important aspect to that too, that you were saying, Garth, is that human in the loop, right? So if you're using it as an efficiency tool, right, to generate a validation document, but then you're still going to go through the document and make sure, hey, everything makes sense here. It's still going to go through your quality reviews and things like that. All it's doing is helping, get the ball rolling. It's not the final, the final mark. Where when we talk about more on the manufacturing side, the machine learning that we've been kind of utilizing for years in automation and vision systems and things like that, that is, again, you need to make sure that you can control the training data set that's going there, make sure the output is that of an output of it's automating somebody who would be doing visual inspection. And you go through that normal life cycle of software validation, qualifying the hardware, and then going through like the process validation, TMV, repeatability and reproducibility of the outputs. So
Yeah.
I don't think much is changing in that element, but
the only one other element that I would stress to people, especially as they're looking at use cases of Gen AI and they're looking at use of these large language models, is you have to pay attention to context window size in terms of what you're doing. I see so often that people are trying to do this incredibly detailed analysis on large documents, but their context window, so for example, with ChatGPT, depending on your particular model you're using, maybe as low as about 16,000 tokens. That really only provides for maybe 12 to 16 pages of information that you're going through as part of your analysis. If you're overloading the system with either more documentation or more analysis, what happens is your results end up becoming truncated, and then your end result of what you're getting out is bad. So I would tell people, when using Gen AI, pay attention to your context window, which is the amount of content you're putting in and the expectation of the content coming out as well.
Love it. Cisco, anything to add? A little louder, maybe. Yeah, we can't hear you. It's just not your day.
Not my day, no?
Oh,
Here we
now we
go.
can hear you every time
Now
you
we
do
can
that.
hear you. Yeah,
Okay.
I feel like, yeah, whatever. At this point in time with this tool, I mean, I cannot agree enough with what was said up until now. And I think foundationally, I always stress it again, call it whatever you want to call it. It goes back to how are you using the tool, right? What are you planning to do? Don't again, there's going to be a lot of regs and things that are coming out at the end of the day, but it's going to foundationally come back to what are we doing with it? What's the risk, right? What am I asking it to do? What decisions am I actually enabling it to make on that end? And understanding that, that'll give you your roadmap basically for what's needed. Don't overcomplicate the validation activities around AI, right? There, again, that use is relevant. If it's, a assistant, aid, and a productivity enhancer. And back to even one of the points that was brought up in that chart beforehand, how do I trust it? Well, how do I trust the next person I've hired next to me, right? It's, there's some give and take around that piece. It's how are you using the information from it? What are you using on your end? And how are you controlling for whatever input it's providing back to you? So again, that goes to the notion of the validation. I think there's a question there about using the validation, the tools, AI to validate validations, and the question coming back with the agency again. Just explain that. What is it really doing? Are you letting it take full control? Yeah, you might need to validate the tool. Are you using it as an aid? No, that's the explanation, right? It's helping to craft a lot of the structure and everything else and accelerate that, but it's not making the final cuts and decisions. So again, back to critical thinking, what's the intended use, and just use some risk-based judgment around that tool and what are you looking to do with it.
Absolutely. Great stuff. So I know we're at time, but maybe we can keep going for a few more minutes.
Yeah, I think there's one question in that came through from the audience that might be a good one for us to talk about, and this was
Yeah, sure.
the COTS system and validation of COTS with AI incorporated in there. So I will tell you that's actually a use case that we're going through currently right now within our company, where we've selected a enterprise quality management tool that has AI embedded in terms of the capabilities and functions that are in there. We are, as a commercially off-the-shelf software, we are relying very heavily on the validation activities that are conducted by the vendor. We have gone back in and taken a look at the AI overlay and the activities that are being done by that. In particular, what's the use case? What's the data that's being used as part of it? How is that modified over time? So how are the results of the use of the AI going to vary as the system matures or there's more data in the system? We've gone through and tested a few use cases associated with that, and we've also incorporated that back into our periodic revalidation activities as well, or our thought process internally about how we're doing it. So I think we've demonstrated the capabilities of the current system and what's there. But this is going to continue to evolve as the regulations change as well, and the expectations come through maybe a little bit different a year or two from now than they are currently right now. So.
Yeah. Great.
Great. Yeah.
And Dick, just to add to this, right, I just wanted to touch upon a couple of key things while we spoke about the type, right? We need to also look at what is our use case and what type of AI ML will fit in, right? That is more important before even we start. Whether do we need a rule-based AI? Is it a supervised machine learning that we need, or it is going to be deep learning or generative AI? So we need to identify that and map it to the use case, and then do the context of use, validation focus, risk assessment. And also after we perform all of these activities, the other key thing is to capture the metrics that we do for AI, that in terms of accuracy, the precision, recall, F1 scores, which will really help us to evaluate the performance of our models. And when we need to revalidate it, we can also see the comparison scores of what the vendor has done on it and align with it and do some readjustments and then put it back into the cycle. So these are some of the key things that I wanted to highlight.
Yeah, and I think you kind of are teeing up the next couple questions, but it's more around what I've been hearing clients come to us and say is, how do you ensure consistent use of AI, right? And then what are the controls that are in the environment? And then other questions about, okay, when I'm validating AI, what's different in the life cycle, right? What do I need to focus on? So I guess any one of those questions, I mean, they're all kind of interrelated, but Cisco or Garth or Sherida, you want to touch on those?
Oh, sure. You mean the different validation for a different AI? Is that what you're asking, Dave? Yep. Okay. To fit AI into our existing software development lifecycle, we need to have AI-specific activities keyed into the SDLC while we apply our CSA risk-based thinking and throughout the models, right? I mean, throughout the lifecycle. So when we look at the phases of GXP lifecycle in planning and requirements, as we already spoke about, the intended use, the context of use, the GXP relevance, risk levels needs to be identified along with the AI specific requirements for its accuracy, fairness, bias, explainability, all of those. And then as part of the design, we need to look at the architecture to support the model explainability, the human in the loop, data pipeline, traceability, all of this. And once we select the appropriate AI that is going to fit into for that respective use case, we will go ahead and do our build, the development activities that include the model training, model selection, validation data sets, segregation, documentation, etc. Then we do the model training and document the results. And then we go for the model testing to cover the model performance metrics, the ones I spoke about, the accuracy, precision, recall, bias testing, and also check with the functional flows and the business components, whether it is fitting for our application that we are trying to validate. Then we go for model deployment and ensure we have the traceability. We have set up adequate drift monitoring mechanisms and also feedback loops. then go into change management, where we do a model performance tuning, retraining, prompt updates, data changes, all of those with a continuous monitoring and review in place.
I'll add to it too. Those are all great activities that I think are incorporated in, definitely at the procedure level or the things that you need to do within your company, but keeping it very simple for people to understand. In essence, most use of AI comes down to a pattern matching process is what it is. I'm matching data, I'm matching content, I'm matching, looking for a trigger, is something good or bad along those lines. So I'm matching a pattern versus data that I provided previously. Keeping that simplistic sort of view in your mind, if I change the data that I changed or trained the model on, so the model is going to be modified, then I have to go through change management. If I tweak the algorithm that's used that came out of the training, so I'm trying to fine tune it, make it better, do anything along those lines, I'm going to go back into validation, or I'm going to review validation, because it's no different than changing a parameter on a process. And then the final thing is, if I change the context of how the AI model is used, where it's applied, how the output is used, that may be something that changes the risk profile associated with the particular use case. And again, it's something you want to go back and look at. So very simplistically, I at least tell people, look at it in those three cases. I'm changing training data or source data, I'm changing the model or the algorithm itself, or I'm changing the context of use. And I need to go back in through a change control evaluation.
And what is that, right? You're either, are you changing the input? Are you changing what it's doing with the input? Or are you changing what you do with the output, right? And all of those things impact the validation lifecycle and should be reviewed. I think that's a really good kind of high level approach. But I think, in theory, right, Cisco, the approach of what you're doing with AI validation is you're going to follow the same lifecycle approach that you have with any software, right? Though there is some deviations that Sharada kind of discussed, but kind of the overall mindset and kind of framework is it's not reinventing the wheel here.
Right. So let's see if this works now. Okay, good. You're not reinventing wheels, but I think and I think it was alluded to in a lot of the previous statements and discussions, right? You've got to also account for the fact that AI doesn't fundamentally work under the normal SDLC kind of fixed logic lifecycle of activity. You got to start thinking about it in terms of that. I think that capability boundary and those guide rails that you're putting into it, right? When you're looking at that, the difference in the validation approach, right? Again, framework, SDLC framework, probably solid and you're good to go, but it's that portion of thinking it, not thinking of it so much as a very deterministic flow of things in that life cycle. It's a bound. You're expecting this thing to perform in this way. How do you ensure that you're still within those guardrails, right? And that should be where you're looking at things a little bit differently with regards to your validation approach and how it might differ from your traditional SDLC process.
Yep. And that's what we're seeing is more of an expansion on what's already there than a total kind of rewrite and flipping it on its head, which is great. And then, okay, finally, I think we already talked about this one too, but revalidation of AI in GXP systems. What is the implication, I guess, on release management, right? How often do you periodically review the outputs, make sure that it's, kind of this whole idea of continuous verification, right? What are you guys seeing, being utilized when you implement an AI system or AI algorithm?
Yeah, I'm going to go easy on this
maybe
one.
I'll start.
It's oh, wait,
Go
I
ahead.
was actually agreeing for a second.
Yeah.
I'm going to go easy on this one and say went away. I'm going to go easy on this one and say I agree with actually what Garth mentioned beforehand, right? What he laid out in terms of thinking through when to revalidate that change management process. That's a lot of what you need to be looking for.
Yeah, I would definitely keep it simple. You know, the more complex you get with specialty sort of evaluations, the greater the likelihood that you're not going to follow the process yourself, which then poses some other compliance issues associated with it. You know, to me, a lot of this is the unknown piece associated with AI, and people get nervous when you're using the term AI. At the end of the day, AI is a process, it's a tool that you're utilizing. It's no different than a lot of other tools that are out there. Maybe better at certain things than other tools you have. But if you take it a view of this as it's a process that's incorporated into what I'm doing, and I think of inputs, I think of algorithms and the way that it's used, and I think of the output associated with it, and you look at the controls with that, you could very simplistically look at what your change control process is, which then triggers your need for revalidation. You know, and I saw a question come through that said, can you even validate AI? The answer is yes, but as with everything, it depends on the AI. You know, AI is such a broad term. The problem is AI is everything from a machine learning system that you're putting in on your production floor that incorporates vision inspection and a model that's very specific to that process, that equipment, that product that's going through. Can you validate that? Absolutely. If you're talking about a large language model and validation of a LLM that's available from ChatGPT or Gemini or such, it depends on the use case. And I do think that you have to rely on the fact that in situations of higher risk and how you're applying it, you may need to create standards that you run through the system periodically to see if you're still getting the same results. And really understand that's not necessarily a validation, but at least it's a proof point that understands the system is functioning the same way as when I originally developed these activities, and therefore I'm getting the same output associated with it.
Yeah, and think about what the definition of validation is, right? It's getting confidence in something that you can't know for sure, right? So at the end of the day, when you say something's validated, it's never 100%, right? It's just within the risk benefit analysis of it, right? You have confidence in it. You have your thesis of why this is working as intended, and getting the desired output. So nothing's really, you know, that's what we're doing here as well. Sherda, you want to take us away? Last comment.
Sure, Dave. Yeah, and to add to what you said, yes, to do it over the period of time consistently. So that is what we are looking at, irrespective of we use AI in the system or we don't use AI in the system. And as Garth and Cisco rightly mentioned, keep it simple. And just to talk in the context of AI, the key trigger points will be when we are putting it under changes will be obviously a model retraining, an algorithm change, a performance drift. Whenever we have a change in our data, when we go beyond the intended use and expand its scope, and also if we are going to integrate it with other validation systems, be it whether the integration is GXP, non-GXP, or AI or not an AI, we still have to check how our models are performing. Then if there is any periodic review findings, audit updates, and if there is any change from the AI vendor for any API updates, we need to make sure that we are going back and checking. And anyway, as part of the continuous monitoring, we will have it as part of our change management, all of this in place. We can make sure that we are looking at it from a metrics driven activity also, sit with data scientists to understand how these works and apply the quality process in it to go ahead and validate and keep it validated over the period of time.
Well said, Sherda. And yeah, so we went 15 minutes over, but you know, sometimes you got to keep it going, right? It was a great discussion. Garth Vader, thank you as always. Cisco, appreciate your time here and your inputs. They're invaluable. And Sherda, thank you. All right,
thanks,
that concludes.
Everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Take care. Have a wonderful.
Thank you so much.